Number 10. Getting through days on autopilot. You wake up, not because you're ready for the day, but because the day has started without asking you. Your body moves before your mind joins. Teeth brushed, phone checked, clothes chosen, words spoken, all without intention. Nothing feels wrong enough to stop you, and nothing feels right enough to wake you up. This is how autopilot begins, not as a collapse, but as efficiency without presence. You function smoothly while something inside you slowly disconnects. Autopilot is seductive because it removes friction. You don't argue with yourself anymore. You don't question your direction. You just execute yesterday's version of life again. The danger isn't boredom. It's numb competence. When every day runs on scripts, your nervous system stops learning. Growth requires uncertainty, and autopilot deletes uncertainty. You become excellent at repeating motions that no longer shape you. Psychological strength weakens quietly here, not through failure, but through absence. You stop noticing when time passes faster. You stop registering emotional signals because they slow you down. Even discomfort becomes background noise, and because nothing dramatic breaks, you assume you're fine. But awareness is a muscle, and unused muscles don't scream when they weaken. They simply fade. The scariest part is how normal it feels. Society rewards autopilot. It calls it discipline, productivity, reliability. But inner strength is not built by motion alone. It's built by attention. When attention disappears, you are still alive, but no longer actively living. Days stack, weeks vanish, and memory thins out because nothing was fully witnessed. Autopilot doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you've learned how to survive without engaging. And survival mode, prolonged enough, convinces you that this dull steadiness is strength. It isn't. It's suspension. Real strength begins the moment you interrupt the loop and ask, quietly but honestly, when was the last time I chose this day instead of just completing it? Number 9. Avoiding challenges that test identity. There's a specific kind of challenge you don't avoid because it's hard. You avoid it because it asks who you are. Not what you can do, not what you know, but whether the version of yourself you've built can survive pressure. These challenges feel dangerous because they threaten identity, not comfort. So you don't say no loudly. You delay. You rationalize. You tell yourself, now isn't the right time. And slowly, your world shrinks around what feels safe to remain. Avoidance here looks responsible. You choose paths where you already know the rules. You stay in roles where you're already respected. You protect your image from failure by never letting it be tested. But identity that is never tested becomes brittle. Psychological strength isn't confidence. It's flexibility under strain. And when you dodge identity testing moments, you don't preserve yourself. You freeze yourself. Over time, you notice something unsettling. You're capable, but careful. Intelligent, but restrained. Talented, but contained. You stop feeling expansion and start feeling maintenance. New opportunities feel less exciting and more threatening, not because they demand effort, but because they might reveal limits you've avoided naming. So you choose predictability over growth and call it maturity. This avoidance slowly rewires your self-trust. You stop believing you can adapt because you haven't practiced adapting. Strength decays not from use, but from overprotection. Like bone that weakens without stress, identity loses density without challenge. You become increasingly invested in protecting who you've been, instead of discovering who you could be next. The cost isn't immediate pain, it's delayed regret. Years later, you look back and realize the most exhausting thing wasn't the risks you took, it was the parts of yourself you never let come alive. Psychological strength isn't built by staying intact. It's built by surviving transformation. And every challenge you avoid teaches your mind the same quiet lesson. Stay small, stay safe, stay unchanged. Number 8. Maintaining routines without purpose. You keep the routine alive even after the reason for it has died. The alarm still rings. The schedule still holds. The habits remain perfectly intact. From the outside, it looks like discipline. From the inside, it feels strangely empty. You're no longer using the routine to move towards something. You're using it to avoid asking why you're moving at all. Structure becomes shelter, not direction. Routines without purpose are comforting because they remove choice. You don't have to decide who to be today if yesterday already decided for you. The body performs, the calendar advances, and life appears organized. But purpose is what gives effort weight. Without it, repetition turns into quiet erosion. You spend energy without gaining meaning, motion without momentum. This is where psychological strength quietly thins out. Strength isn't consistency alone, it's alignment. When action and intention disconnect, the mind starts conserving itself. Passion fades first, then curiosity. Eventually, even dissatisfaction dulls because feeling it would disrupt the system. So you protect the routine instead of questioning it. You defend your habits more fiercely than your happiness. Over time, routine becomes identity. You don't ask if it's still serving you because breaking it would feel like breaking yourself. The routine keeps you busy enough to avoid reflection, but not fulfilled enough to feel alive. Days blur because nothing inside them is being metabolized emotionally. You're functioning, but not forming new meaning. The danger isn't stagnation, it's normalization of stagnation. You begin to believe that this flat, efficient existence is adulthood, responsibility, realism. But routines are meant to support life, not replace it. When purpose disappears, routine turns into a psychological holding pattern. And strength doesn't grow in holding patterns. It grows when you're willing to pause, disrupt the rhythm, and ask the question routines are designed to silence. What am I actually building with this repetition? Number 7. Performing competence instead of feeling capable. You look capable. You sound capable. People rely on you, trust you, even admire how steady you seem. But inside, something doesn't match the performance. You're not moving from confidence. You're executing from memory. You know how to appear competent without actually feeling secure in your ability to adapt. And the more convincingly you perform it, the harder it becomes to admit the gap. This kind of competence is built on repetition, not belief. You know the answers because you've answered them before. You handle situations because you've learned the script. But when something new appears, something unstructured, uncertain, unfamiliar, tension rises fast, not because you can't handle it, but because your self-trust hasn't been updated. You rely on proof from the past, not confidence in your capacity to respond in the present. Over time, this creates a fragile inner dynamic. You protect your image of competence instead of strengthening your actual capability. You avoid situations where you might look unsure. You overprepare. You control variables. You stay in lanes where success is predictable. From the outside, you look stable. Internally, you feel like one misstep away from being exposed. Psychological strength isn't about never struggling. It's about trusting yourself to figure things out while struggling. When competence becomes a performance, learning slows down. Curiosity becomes risky. Admitting uncertainty feels dangerous. So you maintain the appearance rather than expanding the ability. And that maintenance quietly exhausts you. The cost shows up as anxiety you can't explain. You're doing well, yet you don't feel solid. Praise doesn't land. Achievements don't settle. Because feeling capable comes from meeting the unknown, not repeating the known. Real strength isn't how well you perform what you already understand. It's how calmly you step into what you don't. And until competence turns back into capability, you'll keep succeeding outwardly while doubting yourself inwardly. Number 6. Avoiding reflection to stay productive. You stay busy not because there's so much to do, but because slowing down feels dangerous. Reflection threatens momentum. It asks questions productivity can't answer. So you keep moving. You fill the gaps. You stack tasks tightly enough that nothing leaks through. Silence becomes inefficient. Stillness feels like a liability. And without noticing, productivity turns into avoidance. Avoiding reflection doesn't look like denial. It looks like discipline. You tell yourself you'll think later, after this deadline, after this phase, after things settle. But things never settle, because movement has become the shield. Reflection would force you to notice what you've been ignoring. Dissatisfaction without a clear cause, effort without a clear why, direction without conviction. So you stay in motion where those signals can't catch you. This is where psychological strength quietly drains. Reflection is how experience turns into insight. Without it, life becomes a series of completed actions that never integrate. You do a lot, but you don't digest any of it. Lessons remain unlearned. Patterns repeat. Emotional tension accumulates because it's never processed, only outrun. Productivity keeps you functional, but it also keeps you shallow. Over time, your inner world grows unfamiliar. You stop knowing what you actually want versus what keeps you effective. You lose touch with preference, instinct, and intuition because none of them are measurable. And since productivity rewards output, not understanding, you learn to distrust anything that slows you down, even truth. The irony is that reflection doesn't weaken strength, it recalibrates it. The strongest minds aren't the busiest ones, but the ones that can pause without collapsing. When you avoid reflection, you don't protect progress, you delay clarity. And clarity, postponed long enough, turns into exhaustion you can't explain. Real strength isn't just the ability to keep going. It's the courage to stop long enough to ask whether where you're going still makes sense. Number 5. Measuring life by completion, not fulfillment. You begin to measure your life the way systems measure output. Tasks finished, boxes checked, days completed. At night, you don't ask whether the day mattered, only whether it's done. Completion becomes the unit of value. If something is finished, it counts. If it's not, it nags. Fulfillment doesn't enter the equation because it's inefficient, subjective, and hard to quantify. This mindset feels responsible. It keeps you moving forward, but slowly, it rewires your sense of worth. You start feeling relief instead of satisfaction. Relief that something is over. Relief that you survived another list. The problem is that relief fades quickly, so you need another completion, then another. just to feel momentarily okay again. Life becomes a cycle of closure without content. Psychological strength erodes here because meaning is what sustains effort over time. Completion only ends effort. It doesn't nourish it. When you live this way, even achievements feel hollow. You finish something big and feel nothing, not because you failed, but because the metric was wrong. You measured success by ending a task instead of deepening yourself. Over time, this trains you to avoid anything that can't be completed cleanly. Relationships, curiosity, self-discovery, these don't finish. They evolve. So they start to feel uncomfortable, even threatening. You prefer clean endpoints over open-ended engagement. And slowly, your life fills with finished things but fewer felt experiences. The danger isn't that you stop functioning. It's that you stop caring in a way that reaches your core. Fulfillment doesn't shout the way deadlines do. It whispers, and only if you're listening. When completion becomes your primary measure, you don't lose productivity, you lose resonance. Real strength isn't how much you can finish. It's how deeply you can inhabit what you're doing while it's still unfinished. Number 4. Letting days blur together. At some point, you stop remembering days individually. You remember weeks as a single impression, months as a colorless stretch. Nothing terrible happened. Nothing remarkable either. Time didn't collapse. It dissolved. Days blurred together not because life was peaceful, but because nothing inside them was sharp enough to leave a mark. When days blur, it's a signal that attention has thinned. Memory forms around contrast, emotion, novelty. When everything feels the same, the mind stops recording. You still live the hours, but they don't anchor. You wake up tired without knowing why, because your mind has been running without punctuation. No beginnings, no endings, just continuation. This is where psychological strength quietly leaks away. Strength depends on orientation, knowing where you are in your own story. When days blur, narrative disappears. You stop feeling progression. Without progression, motivation becomes mechanical. You push forward, but you don't feel forward movement. Life starts to feel oddly weightless, like you're floating instead of standing. You might tell yourself this is stability. Routine days mean nothing is wrong. But sameness without intention numbs perception. Joy fades first, but so does urgency. You stop feeling fully present in moments because presence requires distinction. When everything blends, nothing demands your full awareness, so you half-live most experiences and wonder why they don't satisfy. Number 3. Replacing growth with maintenance. At first, maintenance feels like wisdom. You stop chasing extremes. You stabilize what you've built. You protect your energy. But somewhere along the way, growth quietly exits the picture. Not because you rejected it, but because maintenance took over completely. You're no longer expanding. You're just preventing collapse. And that shift happens so smoothly it barely registers. Maintenance is subtle because it looks like care. You keep things running. You manage risks. You optimize instead of explore. But growth requires exposure to uncertainty, to failure, to discomfort. Maintenance avoids all three. Over time, your life becomes well-managed but underdeveloped. You don't break down, but you don't break open either. This is where psychological strength plateaus. Strength isn't only about holding ground. It's about increasing capacity. When maintenance replaces growth, you stop training that capacity. You get better at preservation, worse at adaptation. New challenges feel intrusive. Change feels threatening. You don't think of yourself as stagnant. You think of yourself as careful. The danger is that maintenance consumes more energy than growth ever did. Growth has momentum. Maintenance requires constant vigilance. You spend your attention keeping things from going wrong instead of letting something new go right. And because nothing is visibly failing, you assume this is sustainable. It isn't. Over time, you notice a quiet fatigue, not burnout, something flatter, a sense that life is being managed rather than lived. You avoid risks not because they're bad, but because they might disrupt what you've stabilized. But stability without growth is not strength, it's suspension. Psychological strength grows when you willingly stress your current limits. Maintenance protects what you are. Growth discovers what you could be. When you replace one with the other, you don't lose safety, you lose trajectory. And without trajectory, even the most stable life slowly feels like it's going nowhere. The real cost shows up later. You look back and feel a strange grief, not for pain, but for absence. So many days existed, yet few feel lived. Psychological strength isn't just endurance across time. It's the ability to mark time with meaning. When days blur together, it's not time that's moving too fast. It's your attention that has quietly stepped away. And the moment you notice that blur is the moment you realize something inside you is asking to be re-engaged before more life passes unregistered. Number 2, surviving instead of engaging. At some point, your goal quietly changes from living to getting through. You don't articulate it, but you feel it. You stop asking what you want from the day and start asking what you need to endure. Energy is allocated to survival, managing stress, avoiding overload, keeping things from falling apart. Engagement becomes optional. Survival becomes the baseline. Survival mode narrows your field of vision. You focus on threats, obligations, and immediate demands. Curiosity fades because it costs energy. Play feels irresponsible. Depth feels like a luxury. You tell yourself you'll engage later, when things are easier, when you're less tired, when life calms down. But survival doesn't naturally end. It sustains itself by redefining normal. This is where psychological strength quietly hollows out. Strength isn't just resilience under pressure. It's the ability to remain open while under pressure. Survival closes you. It teaches you to minimize exposure, emotional investment, and risk. You protect yourself so well that nothing really reaches you anymore. Not pain, but not meaning either. Over time, you feel strangely detached from your own life. You're present for tasks, absent for experiences. You do what's required, but rarely what's enlivening. Relationships flatten because engagement demands vulnerability. Work becomes transactional. Even rest feels functional, designed only to prepare you for more survival. The tragedy is that survival feels justified. You've been through enough. You're tired. You're doing your best. And all of that is true. But strength that never reopens becomes rigidity. You don't heal by surviving forever. You heal by re-engaging when it's safe enough to do so. Real psychological strength isn't how long you can endure. It's how willing you are to participate again, to care, to risk disappointment, to feel fully. Surviving keeps you alive. Engaging is what makes that aliveness matter. And the moment you realize you're only surviving is the moment you're strong enough to start choosing more than that. Number 1. Mistaking stability for strength. Stability feels like proof that you've figured life out. Bills paid, crises avoided, emotions regulated just enough to keep moving. Nothing is collapsing, so you assume you're strong. But stability is not strength. It's balance under current conditions. Strength is what remains when those conditions change, and that difference is easy to miss when nothing is shaking you. You begin to trust calm more than capacity. As long as things are steady, you don't test yourself. You don't stretch emotionally. You don't put weight on your limits. You confuse the absence of chaos with the presence of resilience. But strength isn't revealed in still water. It's revealed when the ground shifts and you don't disappear with it. This misunderstanding slowly weakens you. You optimize your life to avoid disruption. You design routines, relationships, and roles that keep things predictable. And predictability feels like control. But control isn't power, it's restriction. The more your sense of strength depends on stability, the more fragile it actually becomes. Psychological strength is adaptive. It bends, recalibrates, absorbs shock, and reforms. Stability resists change. It wants things to stay the same. So when life eventually applies pressure, loss, failure, uncertainty, the system you built for calm struggles to respond. Not because you're incapable, but because you stopped practicing capability. The quiet cost is confidence you don't fully trust. You feel okay now, but you're not sure how you'd handle disruption. That uncertainty lingers beneath the surface, dull and persistent. Real strength doesn't come from protecting stability. It comes from knowing you can survive instability without losing yourself. Stability is useful, it's necessary, but it's not the end goal. Strength is the ability to meet change without shrinking. And the moment you stop mistaking stability for strength is the moment you realize something empowering. You don't need life to stay calm to be okay. You need to know that when it doesn't, you'll still be there, present, flexible, and intact.